I used to believe in fairy tales, in the idea that somewhere out there, a man was destined to love me, protect me, and treat me like his forever. When Daniel walked into my life, it felt like destiny. He was tall, confident, the kind of man who knew how to command a room without even trying. His smile seemed genuine. His voice had a warmth to it, and when he spoke to me, it was like I was the only person in the world. I fell hard. I fell because I wanted to believe. At first, he's everything I thought I wanted. Flowers, late-night calls, the good morning texts that made me blush before work. He said all the right words, words that wrapped around my lonely heart like a blanket on a cold night. But behind those words, behind that smile, there was something else. The mask slipped slowly. So slowly that I almost convinced myself it wasn't slipping at all. He began by teasing me, saying my dreams were unrealistic. I wanted to start my own business, and he laughed, saying, "Mandy, you're sweet, but you're not built for that kind of stress." At first, I thought he was protecting me, but then those words became sharper. "Why do you even try? You'll never be successful. Just leave the real decisions to me." That's how it started. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with words. Words that cut deeper than any blade. Soon I noticed I had stopped calling my best friend back. I stopped visiting my mother on weekends. Daniel said it was better if I stayed home, that I didn't need other people filling my head with silly ideas. And slowly, I let myself believe him. Nights turned into silent battles with my pillow, where I buried my face and cried, careful not to make a sound. Mornings became rehearsals, plastering on a smile, convincing myself I was happy, that this was love. But deep inside, a whisper remained, a tiny spark, a voice that told me, "This isn't love, Mandy. This is a prison." I ignored it for years, until the night everything broke. I'll never forget that night. Even now, the memory clings to me like the smell of smoke after a fire. It was one of those evenings where the air felt heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. Outside, the sky was bruised purple and gray, a storm threatening but refusing to break. Inside, my home, our home, felt more like a stage. Every sound was amplified, the creak of the floorboards, the tick of the kitchen clock. My own heartbeat in my ears. He had been drinking, more than usual. I could smell it before I saw him. The harsh burn of whiskey mixed with the faint scent of sweat and cologne. His footsteps were heavy, uneven, echoing across the floor like warning bells that rang louder with each step. My chest tightened. This was not the Daniel I once adored. This was someone else wearing his face. I tried to stay calm, tried to please him. I'd spent the whole day preparing his favorite meal, steak, perfectly seasoned, mashed potatoes, smooth as silk, wine, breathing on the table. I even wore the dress he once called beautiful, hoping maybe, just maybe, he'd see the effort and smile. Maybe he'd remember who we used to be. But when he finally sat down, his eyes were cold. Not the warm brown I fell in love with, but something flat and dark, like glass reflecting no light. His mouth twisted into something between a sneer and a smirk. and before I could even breathe, he shoved the plate off the table. It didn't just fall, it exploded. The sound was deafening. Porcelain shattering, food splattering across the wall and floor like blood from a wound. I froze. My hands were still on the chair, fingers gripping wood so tightly they went white. Time slowed. It felt like the house itself inhaled sharply. Then came his words. Cruel, sharp, deliberate. You're pathetic, Mandy. A waste of space. Do you really think anyone else would ever want you? And then he laughed. That laugh, it wasn't human. It wasn't just sound, it was a weapon. A jagged blade sliding across my skin. It was the sound of someone who took joy in breaking me. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about him cracked, like the plate against the wall. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the key. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger. Eyes wide, hair clinging to my damp face, breathing like I'd run a marathon. I collapsed on the cold tile, pressing my palms to my ears just to drown out the sound of him pacing outside. His footsteps were slower now, heavier. Each thud was a countdown. My tears came fast, hot. The bathroom smelled faintly of lavender soap, but it couldn't mask the sharp sting of fear in the air. My knees ached against the floor, but I didn't move. I curled into myself, rocking slightly, trying to remember the sound of my own voice. Trying to remember who I was before this. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just sad. I wasn't just broken. I was angry. It started as a whisper, a flicker of defiance. Then it grew louder, a pulse in my veins, a drumbeat in my ears. This isn't your life. You deserve better. Get out. It was the same voice I had silenced for years, but now it refused to be quiet. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But in that moment, curled up on that cold tile floor, mascara streaking down my cheeks like war paint, I made a promise to myself. Daniel would never break me again. Never. That was the night Mandy died. And someone stronger, someone fiercer, began to rise. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a survivor in the making. Outside the bathroom door, the storm finally broke. Rain lashed against the windows like a cleansing, like the world itself was bearing witness to my vow. Lightning flashed, illuminating the dark hallway under the door. The sound of thunder rolled through the house as if the universe was answering me. Inside that small bathroom, between the sound of the storm and my own heartbeat, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly, but power. And in that moment, I knew this was the beginning of my end with Daniel and the start of my rebirth. Revenge doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It waits. I learned to wait. I became quiet. On the outside, I looked small and grateful for crumbs. I laughed when he told a joke. I smoothed my skirt when he entered the room. I made sure the house smelled like something he liked. I nodded when he spoke, smiled when he mocked me, played the part of the broken wife. Daniel believed it. He let his guard down. He mistook silence for surrender. But inside, I was awake. Every look, every twitch of his mouth, every careless phrase became a scrap of information. I memorized the cadence of his lies, I cataloged the nights he came home with the faintest smell of another place on his coat. I learned the hours when he was most reckless, the 2 a.m. when he got sloppy with his laptop, the Sunday afternoons he never locked his phone because he fancied himself invincible within our walls. I kept a hidden journal, the kind you'd mistake for nothing if you found it. Blank pages, a silly cover. In it, I wrote down the small things first. The insult disguised as a joke. The way he'd say my name like a verdict. The times he moved my things just to annoy me. Then, the heavier things. Recorded threats. The names of men he mentioned offhand. The dates and times of his calls. I learned to press 30 into the recorder on my phone and act like I was checking a recipe. I took screenshots of messages that tried to rewrite facts. I saved emails and bank notices. I kept receipts and photographs. Piece by piece, I built my evidence. He had spent years making me feel small, but now I had something bigger. I had truth. When he bragged about leaving his laptop awake, I kept my hands steady and pretended to reach for the kettle. When he tossed his phone on the couch, face up and unconcerned, I walked past slowly, fingers grazing the sofa as if straightening a cushion, and committed one more detail to memory. These were not acts of cowardice. They were reconnaissance. There were nights when doubt would creep in, nights when the quiet felt like a cage. I almost told someone once, the heaviness pressing so hard I could taste metal. I sat in my car in the supermarket lot, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, ready to drive away and never look back. But then I would remember the little ledger, the voice memo from March, the photograph of the lipstick on his collar. I would steady my breath. It takes courage to wait when you have the power to run. I practiced patience the way other people practice prayers. I rehearsed the day I would act in my head until it felt inevitable. I imagined the moment I'd stop smiling and start speaking differently. Measured, precise, almost bored. I imagined the faces people would make when the pattern finally revealed itself. I planned contingencies. Where to go if he tried to control my phone. Which friends to call. Where I'd stash copies of the files. I found ways to back everything up without touching his devices. Cloud folders hidden under innocuous names. A trusted friend who would hold a copy if anything went wrong. I thought of lawyers like armor, of witnesses like flint. There were small victories along the way. Once, after a particularly venomous week, I mailed a copy of an audio recording to an email account I'd set up under a false name, just to see if it would stay where it should. It did. I felt a fist unclench in my chest. Another time, he left the car keys in the kitchen and slammed out the door. I slipped the keys into my pocket, as if by accident, and drove to the bank to photocopy a receipt that proved a pattern of payments he'd tried to hide. None of these moments were cinematic. They were quiet, almost petty. But their quietness was the point. The accumulation of small truths becomes impossible to deny. There were nights when I let him think he was winning on purpose. I let him tell a story about how generous he was. I let him parade his version of events at family dinners while I chewed my food and watched the reactions. I learned to make people believe the script he handed them, so that when the script burned, the audience would be all the more surprised. I let him behave recklessly, because recklessness leaves tracks, and yet there were close calls. Once he decided to clean my desk and nearly threw out the notebook with the most damning entries. I watched him from the doorway, palms sweating against the frame, making myself into a statue while my pulse pounded like a warning drum. I waited until he walked away to retrieve it, heart pounding, pretending I had just remembered where I left my pen. Another night, he nearly discovered a hidden audio folder. He reached for my phone with a laugh, thumb hovering over apps, and I offered to make tea with a hand that somehow did not tremble. When he left, the laugh still in his throat, I exhaled until I felt the next breath steady me. That is the thing about silence. It invites arrogance. It makes the loudness of other people feel inevitable and foolish. Let them be foolish. Let them be loud. Their noise makes the pattern easier to trace. I counted days not as punishment, but as calibration. I timed the rhythm of his comings and goings. I learned which of his friends would cover for him and which would betray him without thinking. I turned his hubris into a map. When I lay awake some nights, staring at the ceiling while he snored beside me, I would visualize the exact sequence. The documents delivered, the right person shown the proof, the look on his face when the facade first crumbled. I made lists of who needed to see what and why. I considered the humility of some people and the cruelty of others, deciding who would be allies and who would be neutral. I rehearsed my voice. Not the tremulous whisper he used to reduce me to apology, but a calm, cold register that would make everything sound inevitable. Revenge was no longer just an idea. It was a blueprint. I did not want spectacle. I wanted precision. I wanted him to understand, in the cleanest way possible, that every slight he had ever paid me was accounted for. I wanted the truth to be the instrument of his undoing, not my rage. When the day finally came to move from planning to action, it was not a thunderclap. It was a well-timed set of small motions. An email sent to the right inbox. A printed copy slipped into a folder at a meeting. A friend called and asked questions that made him stumble. The walls he had built around himself collapsed under the weight of proof and patience. He had taught me how to be invisible. I used that invisibility like a blade, slow, unseen, and precise. The day my mother came to visit. That was the first time I realized just how far I'd fallen into his shadow. She'd called earlier that week, saying she missed me, that she wanted to see her daughter, not the ghost she'd been hearing on the phone. She came with her kind smile, her soft scarf, and a pot of homemade soup, the kind she used to make when I was sick as a child. When she walked in, Daniel didn't even stand to greet her. He was sprawled across the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand. Mom smiled politely, trying to lighten the room. "Daniel, it's good to see you again. I made your favorite soup, Mandy told me." He cut her off with a sneer. "Tell your mother I don't eat peasant food." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through skin. I saw my mother's face drop, her hands trembling as she clutched the pot tighter. She tried to laugh it off, pretending not to hear, but I saw the tears forming behind her glasses. I wanted to scream, to throw that pot straight at his smug face, but instead, I smiled. I helped her pack her things quietly. She kept apologizing for causing trouble, but I just hugged her and whispered, "It's okay, Mom. He's not worth it." That night, After she left, I opened a new folder on his laptop and named it Debt of Respect, because that was exactly what he owed me and her. A week later came the next crack in his mask. My best friend, Claire, dropped by. She'd been my lifeline before I married Daniel, the one who knew the real me. She wanted to see how I was doing, and for a while, it felt almost normal again. We laughed, made coffee, talked about old times. Then the front door slammed. Daniel walked in, his face dark and cold. He looked at Claire like she'd trespassed into sacred ground. "Who told you to bring people into my house?" I started to explain, but he raised a hand to silence me. Then he turned his glare toward Claire. "You out." Claire stood her ground. "I came to check on Mandy. She's my friend." He stepped closer, towering over her. "You people think you can just walk in here and interfere with my wife?" His voice rose, each word like a whip. "Get out." I saw fear in her eyes. She turned to me, hoping I'd say something, but all I could do was give her a small nod, not of agreement, but of apology. She walked out in silence. The moment the door shut, Daniel turned to me. "You need better friends." I looked at him and said softly, "You're right, I do." That night, I called Claire from the bathroom, whispering so he wouldn't hear. I told her everything about my mother, the insults, the coldness that filled the house like smoke. She didn't try to talk me out of it. This time, she just said, "I'm here. Whatever you decide, you're not alone." Those words became the foundation of my quiet rebellion. Then came the night that broke any illusion of peace. Daniel brought home 2 of his female colleagues, loud, drunk, and careless. They barged into the house laughing, wearing perfume that stung the air. He called out to me from the living room, "Mandy, get us some drinks." I brought them wine, stayed silent. They sprawled across the couch, throwing their heels on the coffee table, giggling as one of them whispered something in his ear. When I tried to excuse myself, Daniel snapped, "Don't you see the place is a mess? Go clean the kitchen." By the time they left, the floor was sticky, dishes shattered, cigarette ash on my rug. He walked past me, drunk and grinning. "You should thank me. Those are the kind of women who know how to have fun." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't even shout. I just cleaned, silently. Every broken glass, every stain, every trace of humiliation. I cleaned it all. And as I scrubbed, I planned. He thought he'd won because I stayed quiet. But silence is a strange thing. It listens, it remembers, and one day, it speaks. I began to document everything: the insults, the guests, the mess. Claire helped me find a lawyer who knew how to build a case slowly, quietly, perfectly. And when the time was right, it would all come out. Daniel thought the world still saw him as the charming husband, the perfect man. But behind every smile I gave him was a carefully placed thread in a web he couldn't see. Because the trap behind my smile was no longer just mine. It belonged to every person he disrespected, every woman he thought was beneath him. And when it finally closed, he would have no one left to blame but himself. Revenge doesn't arrive all at once. It drips, slowly, methodically, until the target drowns in their own mess. For Daniel, it started small, like a crack in a flawless mirror. At first, only whispers, rumors, doubts from colleagues who once idolized him. A missed good morning here, a curious glance there. Friends who once laughed at all his jokes suddenly became too busy to meet. Even our neighbors, who used to wave enthusiastically whenever Daniel drove by, started pretending not to see him. His spotless reputation, the thing he valued more than love itself, began to crumble. But this wasn't random. This was deliberate. I was done being his shadow. After years of enduring his manipulation, humiliation, and control, I decided silence would become my weapon. And I wasn't alone. Claire, my confidant, the same friend Daniel had thrown out of our house, became my strategist from the shadows. After he chased her away, we kept in touch quietly. She knew his circle, his arrogance, his blind spots, and together with my lawyer, we began to build a plan. Not one of chaos, but of quiet precision. Every move was timed, every truth placed exactly where it would hurt the most. Okay, Claire started with his workplace. She reached out to a few people who had once respected Daniel. His boss, a couple of senior managers, even that intern he'd once publicly embarrassed. She didn't lie. She only shared what was real. Receipts, documents, inconsistencies in the company's financial records Daniel thought he buried. Soon, whispers spread through the corridors. His name, once mentioned with admiration, now drew suspicion. And I played my part perfectly. I smiled when he came home angry, offered dinner when he slammed doors, pretended not to notice the unease flickering in his eyes. The cracks were forming, and he could feel them. Then came the money. It began with one call during a staff meeting. He'd forgotten to silence his phone. Everyone heard the voice through the speaker for a brief, humiliating second. "Mr. Daniel, this is your bank. We've been trying to reach you about your outstanding balance." He turned pale. He stepped outside, but the damage was done. From there, it spiraled. The first legal threat came from a vendor he'd underpaid and bullied years ago. The second, from a former employee he'd forced to resign, who suddenly had proof of Daniel's financial errors. The third, and most devastating, from a small business he'd nearly destroyed, now revived with the help of my lawyer, who quietly guided them through every legal loophole Daniel thought he understood. Each envelope that arrived at his desk was another brick of fear crushing his chest. And then there was his last hangout with friends. Claire made sure it was unforgettable. She sent one of his so-called loyal buddies a folder. Photos, messages, receipts, evidence of his affairs with two women from his own office. The same colleagues he'd once bragged about mentoring. That night, Daniel walked into their usual bar, expecting admiration and validation. But instead, he met silence. His friends' faces were stone. One of them slid the folder across the table. He opened it and froze. The air shifted. Someone muttered, "You're disgusting." Another stood and left. One by one, they followed. By the time the bartender came over, Daniel was sitting alone, staring at the evidence of his own betrayal, his drink untouched, his hands trembling. And then came the neighborhood incident. I was outside that day, mowing the lawn, when Daniel's voice thundered across the street. He was in a heated argument with Mr. Jeffries, the calm, well-liked neighbor everyone adored. The issue? Daniel's unpaid HOA dues and his overflowing trash bins. Mr. Jeffries stayed polite but firm. Daniel lost control, yelling, gesturing wildly. Phones came out, curtains shifted. The same people who once idolized him now recorded his meltdown. I kept mowing, pretending not to notice. But when I passed by, several neighbors smiled and waved at me. At me? And, for the first time, I saw Daniel notice it. The favor had shifted. The mask had slipped. And then, the affairs, exposed, laid bare for everyone to see. His boss summoned him into a private meeting. Documents spread across the table. Emails, hotel invoices, photos, even messages between Daniel and the two women. HR investigations were launched. The same colleagues who once looked up to him avoided eye contact. His loyal assistants requested transfers. And the final blow? Claire made sure a copy of the report found its way to his family group chat. His mother stopped answering his calls. His sister blocked his number. Even his church, where he had pretended to be a model husband, quietly removed him from their committee. Oh. And I didn't raise my voice. I didn't fight. I didn't even gloat. I simply let the truth do its work. Every piece had been positioned carefully, by me, by Claire, by my lawyer. Two women who refused to let me stay broken. Daniel's empire of lies collapsed around him, brick by brick. His money vanished. His friends disappeared. His name became a cautionary whisper. The man who once told me I was nothing now stood alone with nothing. That was the day Daniel finally fell, and I finally rose. The day I finally walked out, I remember the sky was brighter than I had ever seen it. The sun poured over me like it had been waiting, like it was whispering, "Welcome back, Mandy. You've survived." I didn't pack much, just a small bag, a few clothes, and the documents I'd hidden away during my quiet preparation. To anyone else, it might have looked like I was leaving with almost nothing. But in truth, I was carrying everything that mattered. Because I had my freedom. And that was worth more than anything Daniel ever pretended to give me. When I started packing, Daniel came home earlier than I expected. His face froze the moment he saw the open suitcase on the bed. He didn't shout, not this time. He just stood there, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Mandy, please, don't do this." For a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not the kind he used to instill in me, but real fear of losing control. He reached for my hand, his voice shaking. "We can fix this. I'll change. I promise. I just need you." And for a fleeting moment, I wanted to believe him. Because I remembered the early days, the laughter, the late-night talks, the promises whispered in the dark. The man who once brought me flowers for no reason. The man who said he'd protect me forever. But then, like a film reel flashing behind my eyes, came the other memories. The screaming, the silence, the humiliation, the bruises no one could see. Those memories screamed louder than his apologies ever could. I took my hand back, steady but calm. "You'll get the divorce papers soon, Daniel," I replied. He stood there, shattered, while I zipped the suitcase shut. And without another word, I walked past him, down the hallway, and out the door. No tears, no hesitation, just the sound of my footsteps echoing like freedom itself. The air outside felt different, lighter. Every breath filled me with strength, as though the world had been holding its breath for me all this time. What Daniel never knew was that I had been preparing for this moment for months. I'd quietly saved some money, every bit I could hide away from him. And I wasn't alone. My mother had helped, and so had Claire. Together, they'd found me a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy. Just a cozy place with white walls, sunlight spilling through the curtains, and enough peace for me to start over. When I unlocked that door for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Ownership of my own life. It wasn't just a new address. It was my space. My freedom made real. Freedom isn't just walking away. It's reclaiming the pieces of yourself that were stolen. And I had so many pieces to find. The first week was strange. The silence felt heavy, but not suffocating, just unfamiliar. I'd wake up expecting to hear his footsteps, his voice, his criticism, but instead, there was only birdsong and the hum of my own heartbeat. Soon, I started reaching out to the people I'd lost. My sister, who had stopped calling after one too many fights between us. My old college friend who Daniel had convinced me didn't really care. And Claire, my ever-loyal friend, who hugged me so tight when we met that I thought she'd never let go. We laughed. We cried. We talked for hours over coffee and old photos, piecing together the years that Daniel had stolen from me. That day, surrounded by laughter and warmth, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. For the first time, my smile wasn't forced. It was real. And it felt like home. Then there were the little things. Waking up without anxiety twisting in my stomach. Making coffee the way I liked it, extra strong, 2 sugars, no judgment. Reading late into the night without being mocked for wasting time. And one morning, I caught myself humming along to a song on the radio. It startled me, because I hadn't sung in years. Then came the moment I'll never forget. I was driving with the windows down, hair whipping wildly in the wind. The sky was a deep, endless blue, so clear it almost didn't look real. The sun reflected off the windshield, golden and warm, painting everything in light. A song came on, something upbeat, something about new beginnings. I turned it up, and before I knew it, I was singing, loudly, freely. My voice cracked between laughter and tears, but I didn't care. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me, and for the first time, I didn't care where it led. Every mile felt like a promise. Every gust of wind felt like the universe saying, "You made it." It wasn't just a drive. It was rebirth. And Daniel, he became a ghost, a hollow echo of the man who once thought he could control me. His reputation never recovered. His wealth evaporated. He was left to sit in the ruins of his own making. while I rebuilt myself piece by piece. There was a time when I thought revenge would be fire and fury, loud, destructive, unstoppable. But in the end, it wasn't. Revenge was silence. Revenge was truth. Revenge was me, walking away with my head held high, while he crumbled under the weight of his own sins. That was the sweetest revenge of all. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the broken woman he tried to create. I see someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who took back her power. My story isn't about the pain he caused. It's about the strength I found in the middle of it. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about freeing yourself. And I am free.
Enjoyed the story? Then like this video. It helps more people find us. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next twist in Revenge Unfolded. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done differently? And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this story with someone who loves a good revenge plot.